Okay, so today we're diving deep into something that I think is super relevant to, well, pretty much everyone, right?
Definitely.
It's workplace rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about those things that, we should all know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't always. And to help us out with this, we're going to be taking a look at this video
Okay.
by the Legal Strategist.
Cool.
It's called Workplace Rights, What Your Boss Can't Legally Do. 2, Sure, 3 Illegal Actions.
Catchy title.
Yeah, very catchy.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to, not just go to work and clock in and clock out, but to actually feel like
Yeah.
we know what our rights are. And
Know when to kind of stand up for ourselves. Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
you said, it's relevant to pretty much everyone. We all work, most of us work for somebody else.
Exactly.
And we all need to know what our rights are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it.
Okay.
The first one that this video talks about is something that I'm sure a lot of people have probably encountered at some point, which is refusing to pay overtime.
Right. And this is where something called the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, comes in.
Okay, FLSA.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
So basically, that's kind of the bedrock of a lot of employee rights, especially when we're talking about wages and things.
Gotcha.
So the FLSA protects employees who are classified as either hourly
Okay.
or what's called non-exempt.
Okay.
Now, all non-exempt means is that you're entitled to overtime pay, so time and a half for anything over that standard 40-hour work week.
Okay, so if I was making, let's say, $15 an hour, that would mean $22.50 for every hour I worked overtime.
That is exactly right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they made a really good point in the video that refusing to pay overtime is basically just straight up wage theft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so employees can actually sue for back pay, plus there are sometimes additional penalties depending on the state.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, there's actually a really interesting example in the video that I thought kind of highlighted how serious this is.
Okay.
This guy, a pizza delivery driver,
Okay.
he was being told to clock out after 8 hours, but then just keep making deliveries off the clock. And he ended up suing and getting a ton of money in back pay and damages.
Wow, that's crazy. It makes me think that it is really important to keep track of those hours too, right?
Totally. Absolutely. And, there's a good tip in the video about taking screenshots of your timesheets, making sure that you have those records, because a lot of times it's going to be your word against theirs.
Yeah,
So you want to have as much documentation as you can.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one kind of gets into a different area, but it's something that just feels wrong, I think, on every level.
Yeah.
It's retaliating for reporting violations.
Uh-huh.
Like if you see a safety hazard, like, something really dangerous at work, or if you see discrimination happening or fraud.
Right.
And then you get punished in some way
Yeah.
for speaking up, right?
Right. Which sadly is a lot more common than we would like to think it is.
Right.
But the good thing is there's something called Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act, and that exists to protect whistleblowers, right?
Okay.
So any form of retaliation, whether it's being fired or demoted,
Okay.
or even being subjected to a hostile work environment, those are all illegal.
So it's not just those like big, obvious,
No.
like losing your job.
Right.
It could be more subtle things.
Yeah, a lot of times it is subtle things like getting your hours cut, being given bad assignments, being left out of important meetings.
Wow, it could be that like underhanded.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, it really is. And that's another reason why documentation is super important.
Okay.
Because it really can help protect you.
So keep records of everything, every interaction, every email.
Everything.
Okay.
Every instance where you feel like you're being targeted because you spoke up.
So like let's say you reported a safety issue.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're getting like all the worst shifts or,
Right.
You're not being invited to like team lunches anymore.
Exactly.
Document it.
Document it. Because if there's a pattern of behavior, it can often be easier to prove than just one individual incident.
This kind of makes me wonder, what even counts as a hostile work environment?
That is a great question, and it can be a bit subjective, which is, again, why documentation is so important.
Yeah.
A hostile work environment is basically any situation where an employee feels threatened or intimidated, harassed because of things like their race, their gender, their religion,
Right.
or even because they're speaking out against illegal activities.
Gotcha.
It's not just limited to, physical threats or violence. It can be a lot more subtle than that.
Yeah.
It can be a lot more psychological.
So it's like Almost like building this case file, just in case.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so on to illegal action number 3. This one, honestly kind of made me feel a little bit called out. It's forcing employees to work off the clock. I know I've definitely answered, like, a few work emails after hours. I had no idea that that could even be a violation.
Yeah, it's a really common misconception. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a quick email, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But the FNA is actually really clear about that. You have to be paid for all hours worked, even if it's just a quick little task outside of your normal hours.
So even like those late night emails or,
Yeah,
answering a work call on the weekend, that could actually be unpaid wages.
it absolutely could be. And this is another thing that was highlighted in the video that I thought was kind of chillin', honestly.
Okay.
There was this example of somebody who was misclassified as exempt from overtime,
Okay.
even though it sounds like, based on their job description, they really shouldn't have been.
Right.
They were on salary, but they ended up working tons of unpaid overtime because they just thought, well, this is just part of the deal.
Wow. And how do you even know if you're truly exempt or not?
Yeah, that can get a little bit complicated because there are a lot of specifics, but in general, exempt employees are people in like managerial or professional roles.
Okay.
They usually have a certain level of autonomy, decision-making power. If you're ever unsure, the best thing to do is just talk to an employment lawyer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So just to recap, we've talked about these 3 major things to look out for. Refusing to pay overtime,
Mm-hmm.
retaliating against whistleblowers,
Yes,
and then forcing employees to work off the clock.
right.
And, I have to say, this whole deep dive has really been kind of an eye-opener for me.
I think that's the most important thing, right? Just to raise awareness,
Yeah,
Understanding what your rights are is like the first step toward actually protecting yourself.
exactly. And I'm sitting here thinking about, after watching this, like, oh, I've probably, without even realizing it, been violating my own employees' rights,
Right.
which is, not something I want to do.
Definitely not.
It makes me wonder what other subtle ways our rights are being chipped away, especially in like this modern workplace.
That's a really good question, and it's one that I think we all need to be thinking about more and more,
Yeah,
especially as the nature of work changes.
it is a little bit unsettling
Yeah,
when you start to think about it.
it really is.
But, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring your rights, stay informed, and don't ever be afraid to stand up for what you deserve,
I love that.
because you deserve it.
You do.
All right, that's it for today.
Great deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.